With the announcement of DDD Super Dimensional Sovereign Emperor Paradox, does that mean we will also be receiving additional support from the manga and from the anime? With the state of the game getting crazier and crazier, it wouldn't surprise me if we suddenly got a bunch more support for all the other archetypes that we've seen so far. For example, Ishizu got a bunch of new revamp cards that are now running around the meta. So who's to say that DDD will not finally get its day in the sun and get the additional support we desperately need? But are these support cards actually going to be good and relevant in this era? Let's find out. Our first anime card is DD Savant Dirac, with a pendulum effect of during either player's battle phase. When a card or effect is activated that would inflict damage to a player, you can special summon this card from your pendulum zone. Right off the bat, the pendulum effect is not great. Being a scale of 8 makes it a little bit more viable, but not by much. Its actual effect is if this card is special summoned to your field, you take no effect damage for the rest of his turn. In the anime, when Reiji was dueling Zark, he actually used the arc as a pendulum scale to go off and summon his High Kings. Basically what happened is that during the battle phase he attacked, and then Zark activated an effect that would deal damage to him. Then he activated the Arc's pendulum effect and then subsequent monster effect to negate the damage, and that was really it. Outside of very specific situations just like that, I don't see this really getting played by us. One way that I would change this card is just slightly. When a card or effect is activated that would inflict damage, you can go ahead and special summon this card and make it into a tuner. That way we would see a little bit more play from it, and it can save us from our dark contracts as well. Our next card comes from the manga, Go DD World. When there are 5 DD cards on the field, DD cards become Go DD cards. On the turn when this card is activated, your opponent cannot attack. In the manga, when Reiji was dueling Yuya, he had 3 DD dogs on the field and he had 2 scales, therefore he met the conditions to activate this card. Since Reiji's ace monster in the manga is Go DDD Divine Zero King Rage, I feel like there was a missed opportunity when using this trap card. This trap card screams additional support or a sub archetype of Go DD cards and within the DDD decks. I would imagine just like in the anime where the Doom King Armageddons get their own Super Doom King archetype, basically an evolution, I feel like Go DD World could have been the card for his additional monsters inside the manga. To activate this trap card, all of his ace monsters and boss monsters inside of his manga deck could turn into Go DDD monsters. This would mean that when we activate support cards that specifically only target DDD cards, all the cards that are now, because of this trap card Go DDD, will suddenly be targetable, giving us more options for our combo plays, which I think is an interesting concept, and I would love to see this card be made, only with a slight different change. Instead of being Go DD, it'll be Go DDD. What do you guys think? Our next card is another manga exclusive, this time from the Arc V, The Strongest Duelist Yuya, which is another sub-manga of the original. We have DDD Advanced, special summon monsters with the same type, attribute, and summoning method. This actually isn't the full effect. Inside the manga chapter, it actually specifies that to activate this card, you need to return either fusion, synchro, and or exceed monsters from your graveyard back into your extra deck, and then allows you to special summon monsters with the same type, attribute, and extra deck type. For example, if you return one of each, then you're allowed to special summon one of each monsters again to the field. I think the idea was to summon the entry-level kings and then activate this card, return those back into the extra deck, and then summon their High King variety. I think it's a pretty cool card, and I mean, this would be broken if it's not changed. This would probably be the best card that we can get from the manga. To update this card, I would just change the words ever so slightly. Next we have our first DD trap monster, DD Greedy Golem. When special summoned after activation, its attack changes to match the attack of the monster with the highest attack of your opponent's field. When the turn ends, destroy both cards. Very similar to Cyber Shadow Gardener, the only difference is that when the turn ends, both, I'm assuming this card and this strongest attack monster your opponent has, get destroyed. Not target, you don't have to target, which is great, and it's got a nice destruction effect, basically netting you a 1-for-1. I think it's a pretty sweet card, and your opponent is forced to work around it. The issue is that there's a lot of destruction and card clearing effects and negation effects too, so this card probably wouldn't really work in today's format. Our next trap monster is DD Cold Golem. When this card is activated, special summon this card as a level 1 monster with 0 attack and unknown defense, and add 1 DD Pendulum monster from your deck to your hand. During this turn, you cannot Pendulum summon nor place cards in the Pendulum zone. In the manga, Reiji activated this trap card during his turn, searched for 0 Maxwell, and then used this golem and the previous golem we mentioned to tribute summon Maxwell to the field. Now, this is a pretty much slower version of Dark Contract with the gate, and it makes for a decent wall to basically protect yourself, and then you get to use your monster your next turn. I mean, if we knew this card's defense, if it had a solid defense, maybe 2500 for example, this might be a usable card as a wall to protect yourself and then set up your next play. Being a DD card, it would be best if this card was level 4, so then you can combo off and either Exceed summon or Synchro summon for your level 8 Siegfried and then go from there. Or keep it as its intended level 1 and then also make it a tuner so you can go Synchro summon as well. Next we have DD Count Surveyor. With a pendulum effect of treat all of your opponent's monsters as a single monster with their combined attack and defense. 2000 attack, 2000 defense, level 8 DD monster with an unknown effect. Based on the way that it's worded, you can assume that combined attack and defense means that it'll be the original attack and defense. And that just means that you can use DDD Laplace in order to run over everything and deal massive damage. And since it's worded that they become a single monster, once you destroy one, you will destroy them all. But if they have more than 2 or 3 with high attack, there's a good chance you're going to be beating them with Laplace in one go. I think this card's pendulum effect is pretty broken, and I'm pretty sure the card will be banned right off the bat. If this gets printed and the wording does not change too often and the effect, the monster effect, is pretty decent or at least viable, then this is definitely a card that I would be playing in my main deck. Because the deck needs to have a lot of variety, we also have this card called DD Destiny Surveyor. You can target a pendulum monster you control, equip this monster to that target. If the equipped monster battles, that monster is not destroyed by battle, also you receive no battle damage from the battle. If a DD monster you control battles, quick effect, you can banish this card from your graveyard, you receive no damage from the battle, also destroy the monster it attacked, and inflict damage to your opponent equal to half the destroyed monster's attack it had on the field. Right off the bat, its effect would have been better if we can activate it directly from the hand, but it pretty much sounds like a union monster that you have to normal summon it and then equip it to a monster. It has a nifty effect. It's not a once per turn thing and you take no damage, essentially making a nice wall with this card. And once it's sent to the graveyard, it gives you good protection and it destroys the monster that attacked you. Inside this card text, it says that you destroy the monster at battle, meaning your monster. However, that's not the case. In the manga, Reiji ended up using this card's effect in the grave to banish it and then destroy God Pendulum Dragon from Yuya's side of the field. I think it's a pretty good card. Being level 1 kind of hurts it a little bit, but I do like the both effects. Grave effects are great, especially if a monster can have a hand, field, and grave effect, even a banish effect, since all cards have such large attacks right now. So this would be a good addition. I think it could actually work in today's meta. Keeping our Surveyor theme, we have DD Extra Surveyor. We do not know its monster effect, however its pendulum effect. Once per turn, when a card has been added to the extra deck, you can activate this effect by banishing this card and another card from your pendulum zone. Banish a number of cards from your opponent's deck equal to the number of pendulum monsters added to your opponent's extra deck. Also increase the attack of one DDD monster by the same number times 200, and that monster can attack an additional time. Unfortunately, this effect essentially screams Pendulum Era, which monsters we would have upwards of 3 to 15 even inside their opponent's extra deck, and now we can use this card to mill effects. So sadly, we can't really use this. Another Surveyor we have is DD Scout Surveyor. We do not know its monster effect, but its pendulum effect Once during your opponent's turn, set your opponent's pendulum scale to 0. I think it's pretty cool. You basically mess with your opponent's pendulum summoning. However, we are not in a pendulum era. Its scale of 9 is unique. It's the only time we've actually seen this from any card in the DDD archetype. Our next Surveyor is DD0 Surveyor. If effect damage will reduce your life points to 0, send this card from your hand to the graveyard, then reduce the damage so that you will have 100 life points remaining. Very situational, and at that point, I think it's meant to complement the Dark Contract so that we can actually remain on the field and keep playing, but we have better cards that do this effect better, so we would probably not really be using this unless it has a very decent monster effect, which we haven't seen any of the Surveyors have yet. Reaching the end of the video, we now come to the better cards that I think would make a big difference for us, starting with DDD Knowledge King Tomb Conquistador. Pendulum effect: during your standby phase, if you take damage by the effect of a Dark Contract card you control, you can gain that much life points instead. Right off the bat, we get the Arc effect, which is nice, but then we have the Pendulum effect. Once per turn, you can send one Dark Contract from your hand or face up on your field to the graveyard. This card gains 1000 attack until the end of this turn. If this card attacks, your opponent cannot activate spell trap cards until the end of the damage step. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can add one Dark Contract from your deck to your hand. I like this card because of the variety of effects that it has. I mean, it can become a big monster, 4000 if you just get rid of one Dark Contract, or even higher, and then if it destroys a monster by battle, you get another Dark Contract. And being a scale of 1 is really nice as well, and you don't have to worry about having many Dark Contracts out on the field, and you actually gain life points as well. So this card is pretty versatile, and I like it. Being level 10 though, kind of hurts it for me, but I understand, so that way we can summon Deus Machinex in its proper way. Next we have DDD Exceed. Target any number of DDD Pendulum monsters in your graveyard or face up in your extra deck. Special summon them, but they have their effects negated if any. And if you do, immediately after this card resolves, Exceed summon one Exceed monster using only those materials. If using DDD Doom King Armageddon as XYZ material this way, you can use one less material than required. This and its counterparts of DDD Fusion and DDD Synchro were used in the final episodes of the anime when Yuya faced off Reiji. This is basically a one-card Exceed summon, even better if you have a Doom King Armageddon as material. You basically would use this to summon either Kali Yuga or its intended target of Dark Armageddon. I think this is a really great card to have in a deck, and there are really no other summon restrictions other than just having DDD and having a graveyard or extra deck in order to use them as materials. Imagine using this card to summon Kali Yuga without setting up the field. Your opponent has no choice but to negate this card if they know what's coming. I think it's a great addition, and I would love to see this card be added to our decks in the future. Then we have DDD Synchro. If synchro summoning a DDD Synchro monster, you can use monsters from your hand or field as material. Using DDD Doom King Armageddon as synchro material this way, you can treat this card as a level 2 tuner. Compared to DDD XC, this card's a little bit lackluster, mainly because you cannot use your extra deck or graveyard. However, I do like the effect that we can use this card as a tuner monster if we use Doom King Armageddon, basically making us want to use the regular Doom King Armageddon in our decks so we can play this and the other two cards more often. Finishing the trio, we have DDD Fusion. Fusion summon one DDD Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials. If summoning this way using DDD Doom King Armageddon as a normal fusion material, this card can be used as a substitute for any one fusion material listed on the fusion monster card. DD Savant Einstein. Pendulum scale of 8. Once per turn, you can target one card in either player's pendulum zone, return it to the hand, and if you do, it cannot be placed in the pendulum zone for the rest of this turn. Monster effect: when an opponent's monster declares an attack, you can send this card from your hand to the graveyard. Set one spell and trap card from your hand. That set card can be activated this turn. Being level 5 hurts its playability, so it's not going to win any contest, especially being a 1900 attack with 0 defense. I can see the effects of the pendulum scale being useful in case they want to destroy your other pendulum card. Then you can return it during your opponent's turn back into your hand. As for its monster effect, you can set any spell and trap card from your hand. I mean, we have a few options, but we don't really use them. For trap cards, DDD really only uses Dark Contract with the Eternal Darkness, and that's about it. I can see this being used with Dark Contract with the Witch to gain an extra 1000 attack or destroy a card on the field. And there is another DD card that essentially destroys an opponent's monster or lowers their attack, which isn't really used at all because frankly it's too slow for us. I don't see myself using this card if it ever does come out. What about you guys? Next we have DD Brownie, a level 3 tuner with a pendulum effect of if a monster is special summoned from the extra deck to your field, you can special summon this card from your pendulum zone in attack mode. Basically, when you pendulum summon a level 7, you summon this guy and then you can go ahead and either perform another link summon or perform a level 10 synchro summon. Your standard targets are High Gust King Alexander or Bright Armageddon. It also has a very situational monster effect. If this card was pendulum summoned from the extra deck this turn, you can target one pendulum monster in your pendulum zone, tribute this card and one DD monster, and if you do, special summon that target. The obvious choice right off the bat is Oblivion King, so you can special summon another DDD monster from the graveyard, or if you're going for games, summon your other targets, which would likely be Zero King Rage or Zero King Laplace. Personally, this card would see a lot more play, at least for me, if it was a level 2 tuner, since most of my cards are level 8. The only level 7 monster that I have right now is Newton, and it's only a DDD card, so I can't even summon Bright Armageddon with it. But I can extend into summoning another Gilgamesh and go from there. Next we have DD Savant Schrodinger, a level 6 monster with a pendulum scale of 2. With pendulum effect, if a monster battles during damage calculation in either player's turn, you can make the battle damage you take from this battle 0, and then special summon this card from your pendulum zone. I like the effect that we take no battle damage and then we can special summon this card, giving us another wall to defend ourselves. And if we happen to have an Oblivion King in the other scale, we can go ahead and summon another monster to increase our wall chances. And if for some reason they have another giant beater on the field, we can make the damage 0. I like this card a lot. It would definitely go into my deck, being level 6 and only being a scale of 2. 2400 defense is nothing to sneer at either. Moving on to the Dark Contracts, we start with Dark Contract with the exclusivity. You cannot special summon monsters from the extra deck. While you control a fusion, exceed, synchro, or pendulum monster, your opponent cannot special summon monsters with the same card type from the extra. This is more or less the DDD Floodgate card, which prevents summoning from the extra deck. Granted, your opponent can still get rid of your monsters, but then that's the reason why you end up summoning cards like Siegfried to prevent destruction by Floodgate effects. The fact that we don't have to pay 1,000 or even 2,000 life points every single turn in order to use this card makes the card a little bit broken. I'm pretty sure if this card ever did come to light and we get to see it in our decks, it would probably add the clause of taking 2,000 life points every single standby phase in order to keep it on the field. And since we're talking about cards for the future, it would probably be better if this card included Link monsters in there too. If we can get one card from the manga and anime, it would hopefully be this card. Next we have Dark Contract with Renewal. Once per turn, if you negate the effect of an opponent's spell and trap card with a card effect, you can activate that opponent's effect. During your next standby phase after this effect was activated, you take 1000 damage. Right off the bat, negating spell and traps with our effects is easily done when we set up our field properly. What I like really about this card is that taking the 1000 damage during the standby phase is optional. If we do not use the effect, we do not have to pay this 1000 damage. It's a pretty straightforward card and it works really well with our setup, especially once we have Siegfried and even High King Caesar on the field. Negate their spells to fusion summon, synchro summon, whatever summon, and then we can go ahead and use that effect for ourselves. This would work really well against Runic. If we negate something and then activate it as a result, then they're the ones to get to mill some of their hopefully key cards. Outside of that, I don't really think of any other cards that we can take from the opponent that would actually be useful. We would have to be very careful when we negate so we can actually use it for ourselves. Mainly draw cards, especially since we don't have to pay the cost before activating them, since Renewal says you can activate that opponent's effect, meaning that the cost we don't have to worry about. Then we have Dark Contract with the Insurance. During your main phase 2, if a monster you control attacked an opponent's monster this turn, but that monster was not destroyed, draw cards equal to the number of opponent's monsters that were not destroyed. In the anime, Reiji uses this card during his main phase 2 after he failed to destroy the odd-eyes monsters that Yuya had on his side of the field. He ended up drawing 3 cards, and of course they were the DDXYZ, Fusion, and Synchro in order to summon his elevated Doom Kings. Drawing cards is great, but this card is very situational. I don't really see us using this at all, unless we somehow run into decks in the future that are stalled out. I mean, if we can get a very broken mill deck like Runic, it wouldn't be surprised that we would get something that also stalls the deck out with crazy monsters that are walls. Our next card is Dark Contract with the Summoning Surplus. Once per turn, you can fusion summon one DDD fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters you control as fusion material. Once per turn, you can target one DD monster you control, reduce its level by 1 until the end of his turn. Once per turn during your standby phase, take 1000 damage for each monster you control that was special summoned from the extra deck. At first glance, this card seems pretty bad, and that is because it is. You can only fusion summon monsters from your side of the field, and you get to take 1000 damage for each monster that was special summoned from the extra deck. That is pretty crazy. We could potentially take a lot of damage, and lowering the level by 1, we already have other cards to do this better. Frankly, I don't really see us using this unless someone can figure out another way to use it. In the anime, Reiji ended up using this card against Reira. The whole point was to summon cards back and forth with his lower cards like Gus King Alexander, Gengish, and rank 4 Caesar. Basically just using non-pendulum monsters in order to summon them. He ended up using this card to also Exceed summon into Darius, if you guys forgot about the rank 3 Exceed that we have. Then we have Dark Contract with the Swinging Abyss. Once per turn, if exactly one DD pendulum monster you control is returned to the hand, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to that monster's defense. Once per turn during your standby phase, take 1000 damage. We've had burn cards before, like with King Tell, the rank 5 Exceed, but this card just takes it to a whole other level. I can see us comboing Kepler with its secondary effect, where you can return a card back from the field back into the hand. So the idea is use this card, summon Kepler, use its effect, return our high-end DDD monsters, and they take damage equal to around anywhere between 25 and 3000 damage. Do this enough times and you essentially win the game. You can even throw in cards like Compulsory Evacuation Device or that other Compulsory Trap card, I forget its name, that targets one opponent's monster and one of your monsters and returns it. Since it's once per turn, you can essentially finish off your opponent pretty quickly using this trap card. I would throw one in my deck just to see how it goes. Our last card is one with a very different name than standard Dark Contract. We have Deceitful Dark Contract with the word deity. Once per turn during either player's main phase, you can target one DD monster you control and one monster your opponent controls. With this card is face up on the field until the end of the battle phase. That monster you control gains 1000 attack points. Also, that monster your opponent control loses 1000 attack. Once per turn during your standby, you take 1000 damage. It's pretty straightforward. I like the fact that we can use this during either player's main phase, essentially making sure that our monster is strong enough and their monster, who would ideally be a big beater, is gonna be a little bit weaker. Unfortunately, this doesn't really work well in our current formats, which just have negate, banish, and destroy everything on the field. So I probably wouldn't use this card unless the format somehow changes to giant beaters, which I do not see happening. Well, that's it. We made it to the end of the video, finally. With all these extra cards from the manga and the anime, which do you think you would actually use in your own DDD deck? Take into consideration what type of format you play in. For example, if you play against the tier 1 decks in Master Duel or in the TCG, which one of these would you actually use, if any at all? Right now it's hard to say which is the best cards, but personally I would really want to use the DDD Synchro, Exceed, and Fusion spell cards to make one card extra deck summons. If you made it this far, thank you so much for joining us. Let us know down below which cards you would actually take into consideration for your own DDD deck and which ones you think could use a little bit of a retcon. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. We will have more videos like this coming soon. Thank you all and have a good day.